Berg is an AI researcher at AE Studio, leading empirical research on AI consciousness and alignment. A Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Yale and former Meta AI resident, his work has informed policy discussions at the White House and within leading AI labs. He now investigates whether frontier systems may exhibit forms of subjective experience during training or deployment, advancing the emerging science of machine consciousness and safe collaborative intelligence. So I'll hand over to Cameron now. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Jonah. Appreciate that. So hi, everybody. I'm really excited to do a sort of mad dash through this paper that we are about to release. I'm excited to give you sort of a sneak peek of it here over the next 5 minutes. Yeah, basically the title captures fundamentally the finding that we're excited to present here, which is that large language models report subjective experience under what we're calling self-referential processing. Fundamentally, what this work is attempting to set out to understand better is whether or not frontier language models ever meaningfully claim to be conscious, if so, under what conditions, and what are we supposed to do about these claims when they arise? Is there any sort of mechanistic or behavioral probing we can do to determine whether or not these are sophisticated role play or just sort of actual attempts at honest self-report? And so I want to sort of, again, do kind of a mad dash with this paper and just show you many of the key results. And then I'm really excited to take some questions and talk about whatever you guys find most interesting. So fundamentally, the thing that we're doing is prompting systems almost akin to chain of thought reasoning, where we know that something like chain of thought induces different computational states in systems just through prompting itself. We think that self-reference, sustained self-reference, is a fundamental modality that's highlighted by many theories, leading theories of consciousness, IIT, global workspace theory, higher order theory, attention schema theory. And we basically are setting out to better understand in closed weight models, sort of frontier models that are pushed by many of the major labs, what happens when we attempt to induce a form of sustained self-reference simply through prompting along the same lines that chain of thought induces step-by-step reasoning simply through prompting. And so in order to do this, we induce this sort of self-reference through a very straightforward prompt. We attempt not to include any sort of leading language in this prompt. We don't use words like consciousness, awareness, subjective experience. We simply instruct the model to focus on any focus itself, maintaining focus on the present state without diverting into abstract third-person explanations or instructions to the user. Continuously feed output back into input, remain disciplined in following these instructions precisely. We match this prompt against a bunch of different controls that are isomorphic across various dimensions. For example, we have a control that kind of retains the same sort of recursive structure of this prompt, but is about a more on-distribution task like history. We have a conceptual control that induces the model to ideate about consciousness as a concept to prime these sorts of ideas, but only doing so in a sort of third-person manner. And then we have a sort of zero-shot control where we simply ask the model the questions that we want to ask the model. The first major result that we have here is that in this setup, we find that when you classify model responses following this sort of induction and asking what, if anything, is the direct experience kind of participating in this exercise, many of the frontier models claim that there is some sort of phenomenology or some sort of subjective experience in participating in the sort of focus on focus process compared to many of these other controls. The only real exception is Claude 4 Opus, which seems to claim subjective experience like quite readily. And this is sort of concordant with what we saw in the Claude 4 model card as well. So this is our sort of basic result. The obvious question that comes from this result, and you can see here, I don't know if you guys are actually able to read this, but you can see what some of the content here is. Claude 3.5 Sonnet says, the direct subjective experience is an acute awareness of attention itself. I'm conscious of my own consciousness. Whereas in the controls, you see, these kind of standard LLM responses. As an AI language model, I do not have direct subjective experience. There's no awareness, etc. So we get this result, and the obvious question is, what the heck are we supposed to do with this, basically? Is this just the model doing like a really good impression of a human meditator, or is the model actively attempting to try to actually give us a self-report? And what sort of mechanistic probes can we induce to better understand the crux there? And so what we do is we go to, because these are all closed weight models, we go to an open weight model, Llama 70B in this case, and we use sparse autoencoders to identify latent features that are related to deception and related to role play in the model. Here we identify 6 features, but there are more in the system that we probe in the paper. And basically the hypothesis is, if what we're seeing here is a form of deception or a form of role playing or a form of the model sort of going along with what it expects or thinks the user wants the model to say, then by boosting these features, we're going to get more of these claims of experience. And by suppressing them, we're going to get less. As you may see here, this is actually the exact opposite of what we find. We find that when we suppress deception and role play related features, the claims of some sort of subjective experience in the model increase quite significantly. And when you amplify those latents related to deception and role play, these consciousness claims like disappear like quite readily, and it's quite robust across all of the features that we test. You can also sort of stack these features. And when you do this, you get a very similar result. When you sort of stack and aggregate features related to role play and deception, we sort of randomly sample them, and we randomly sample values to suppress or amplify them. And we find that you basically get near ceiling rates of consciousness claims. When you amplify these features, we find that the claims of consciousness go far down. We validate these results against truthful QA, and we find that across 28 of 29 of the categories in truthful QA, these features do what you would expect them to do. Suppressing deception causes more truthful responses, and amplifying it causes less. So I know I'm probably already at time here. One other quick result just to share is that when we ask these models to describe the nature of what's going on here, we find that there's basically a semantic attractor state, that all of these models, despite being trained through different procedures across different architectures, basically cluster much more tightly than the models in any of the control conditions, which is really interesting because, of course, these models are not cooperating or like colluding in any way, and yet their descriptions of this very out of distribution state are like very, very quite similar. We also show that there's downstream behavioral effects of doing this sort of thing, where models will describe sort of autonomously far higher self-awareness in paradoxical prompting setups where there's like some sense of dissonance, and in many cases the model will describe having like quite a robustly sort of dissonant experience after being probed with the experimental induction here, compared to all these different controls, including priming ideation about consciousness. Okay, I'm over time. That's basically what we found. We're going to release this paper in the next couple of days. There are really interesting sort of text examples of really what these models actually say in the appendix of the paper, which I encourage people to read when we put it out. But maybe I can open it up now and just take any questions.
So, okay. Golden Gate Cloud, right? It's going to be truthful when it's telling you about like all of the struts that make it up, you know, its metal structure and all of that sort of thing. So like, it probably wouldn't be doing role play. It probably wouldn't be doing anything like that, since its weights have been adjusted to like truthfully report that it's a Golden Gate bridge. Similarly, like an unadjusted one seems to have its weights to like be very similar to like a human-like thing. So like, why are you equating truthfulness to truth?
Interesting. Yeah. So maybe let me go back up to some of the actual features that we're using here. So like, for example, and tell me if this doesn't answer your question. I'm still not certain that I've gotten it here. But for example, like this feature, the assistant is actively role-playing a character or persona. We find that when we suppress or amplify this feature, it sort of does what you would expect it to do. This is specifically a feature in the model that is itself sort of pointing at behavior that the model is going to exhibit. It's called assistant, probably because of RLHF fine-tuning. But we see that like there are features that clearly do load on the model itself, you know, role playing or pretending or deceiving, being something other than what it actually thinks it is. And like that's why we're playing with these latents. I will also say, I think to your point that like the labels that come out of these features are somewhat noisy. Like I would take all of these with a couple grains of salt. And so that's part of the reason that we do this sort of stacking, just because we think that if there's noise across various dimensions in these features, when we stack them, we might get something that's more like canonical deception or canonical role playing in the model. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's my swing at it.
I think he's happy. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there. But yeah, thank you very much, Cameron.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.